There are a couple reasons why I was excited to invite Carmelo Presicce to join the Lifelong Kindergarten podcast. First, I want to talk with Carmelo about the new round of the free Learning Creative Learning online course that he's leading, starting in just a few weeks. The course is a great way for you to explore the key ideas and themes underlying this Lifelong Kindergarten podcast series in a more interactive, participatory way as part of a worldwide community of educators, parents, makers, and other curious learners. Learning Creative Learning is not like any other online course. You don't just learn about creative learning, you experience creative learning. And here's a second reason why I was excited for Carmelo to join the podcast. I've always been inspired by the way Carmelo creates a culture of caring in the workshops, courses, and communities that he facilitates. While my mentor, Seymour Papert, focused on engaging learners in thinking about thinking, Carmelo focuses on the importance of caring about caring. A couple years ago, Carmelo wrote his PhD dissertation with the title, Facilitating Creative Learning, Engaging in a Practice of Care. In it, he wrote eloquently on why caring is more important in today's society than ever before. Here's one memorable sentence from his dissertation. In a world increasingly marked by polarization and division, with rising nationalism and authoritarian tendencies undermining democratic processes around the world, the capacity to care for others is not sentimental, it's vital. As you listen to my conversation with Carmelo, I hope you'll consider how you can apply Carmelo's ideas about caring in your own work and in your own life. And I hope you'll consider joining the free Learning Creative Learning course starting on April 13th at lcl.media.mit.edu. Hi, Carmelo. Welcome to the Lifelong Kindergarten podcast.
Hi, Mitch. Thanks for having me.
I'm looking forward to talking to you about the Learning Creative Learning online course and community. I know you're going to be starting a new round of it soon.
Yeah, I'm very excited to start a new round. It's going to be the 8th round since 2017 when I started with others to lead this project.
I know from the beginning we talked about learning creative learning as both a course and a community. And you've really leaned into the community side since you started facilitating and organizing the course in 2017. Maybe you can say a little bit more about in what ways is it both a course and a community?
Yeah, I think most people kind of get into it because they want to learn more about the ideas. What is creative learning? What is this framework? And we can talk a little bit about the 4 P's of creative learning, which is how the course is organized. Like every week, we explore what does it mean to learn through projects. So how do we help children and students of all ages, educators indeed, also to learn by making something that they're passionate about, and how can we leverage the social aspect of learning through peers, and also how can we provide an environment where people are more free to be playful and to try things.
I know there's a real contrast to most online courses. For most online courses, they're so organized about delivering information and delivering instruction. So I think the course really stands out by trying to not just be helping people learn about projects, passion, peers, and play, but to experience the course as projects, passion, peers, and play.
Absolutely. This is actually something that my friend and colleague and Lily Gabaret, who co-organized with me the course for many years, she calls it pedagogical recursion. Yeah. And I love this expression because we're not only telling about creative learning, but we're creating an experience where people can try what does it mean to learn creatively firsthand with us.
May talk a little more about the community side of it, because I guess that relates to the peers of the 4 Ps. But I know a big emphasis is that it's not just about tools and activities, but also relationships and ways of engaging with other people.
Yeah. That actually connects with my experience as a learner first, because I joined the community and I found someone else who spoke Italian, Beatrice, and she was so excited to find another Italian there. And she introduced me to other people from all over the world. And we started to connect and to learn from each other's work, but also developing friendships, honestly. And this is not something that happens very often when you are in an online course, in an online environment. And The other aspect of community, which is, I think, is very interesting, is that people come back to the same course. This is also very unusual, very not typical, right?
People don't usually take the same course over and over again, but they do with learning creative learning.
Yeah, because it's both a way to explore the same ideas through a different angle. You might do some different activities, and we can talk about what the type of things that people will do during LCL. But also, you find your old friends and meet new friends. So really the community, it's kind of one of the driving factor for people to come back and be engaged with the ideas.
Explain a little bit about just the structure of the course. Like, it's generally in recent years been a 6-week course, but tell me about sort of the different ways that people get engaged.
One activity that we usually do in week 1, we're gonna do in the preliminary onboarding week, is childhood object. We ask people to share an object that was particularly meaningful for them in childhood or in general, like that helped them think about learning in a different way. And that is usually an amazing kind of activity that gets into the spirit of LCL and creative learning. We're not we are asking people to put themselves into the course to get to know each other. And usually you have people like saying, oh, that toy I also used to have it, or like, oh, I used to do this with my cousin, with my brother, you know, and all this kind of like personal connection that we start kind of creating from the get-go, from the beginning.
Yeah. So through the course, there'll be these different types of prompts where that's one of them, but they'll have different prompts to learn different things.
Yeah, and so the 6 weeks are organized in, you know, there is an introduction to creative learning. So you introduce this 4 Ps that we just talked a little bit about. And then for the following 4 weeks, we dive deeper into each of these project, passion, peers, and play. And the end is like a reflection on creative society. This year, we're going to have what we call LCL Chat, which is a conversation about the ideas that we're exploring that week. And we have 2 types of hands-on workshops. One is an Octo Studio workshop in collaboration with the Octo Studio team.
Which is the new mobile app that was inspired by Scratch, but allows people to create their own animations and games on mobile devices.
Yeah, and the other one is an exploration of AI. We're gonna call it like AI Playground. And we want to explore what does it mean and what does it feel like to create with these new tools like generative AI tools, and how does that change the creative process.
But to try to do it in a creative learning spirit, because we know lots of things are being done with AI these days that don't feel very aligned with the creative learning spirit.
That's exactly the reason we want to experiment, and we want to see what feels close to our values.
Yeah. So I know that in trying to support this community, one thing that I think you've tried to do is create a whole community of facilitators who then support, and that's been a big effort of yours, because we don't just, although it's great to have people join and interact with each other, we know that trying to facilitate those interactions and facilitate the overall process is an important part of the educational experience. So maybe you can say a little bit more about this support from facilitators.
Yeah, facilitators are really the core kind of the leading force behind the experience in LCL. And most of the facilitators, I would say all of them, have experienced LCL as participants first. And we usually, you know, with the rest of the team, we find people that we say, oh, we should definitely invite someone to be a facilitator in the next round. And over the course of time, you know, we started with a very small team, and now there is about 40 people who are kind of like joining from all over the world and speak different languages and can support learners in different languages, which is also one of the characteristics of LCL.
Yeah. I know another characteristic of LCL, from the beginning, I remember we always said, this is a big experiment, because we know that, you know, some things might not work and things might change over time, but it's also to serve as a model. We want people to see their own learning as a big experiment, or people are educators when they support young people learning to see that as an experimental process where they can try new things and take risks. And so, I know you've also tried to continue to create that culture around it, that everything is an experiment that you're trying and revising over time.
Yeah, we keep considering LCL a big experiment, and we keep tinkering with it. And this like addition of this new workshops or tweaking the activity prompts. It's part of that ongoing process of refining, but also making it more exciting for people who are coming back, or even for ourselves. Like we want to keep kind of like experimenting with it. And I would add another thing. We are very upfront about this with participants. When taking risks, there might be a cost. If something goes wrong, people might be disappointed, or like we might be disappointed with ourselves. We try to make it clear in the facilitation team and with the broader LCL community that we are trying things. We are humans. We might make mistakes. Something can go wrong. And sometimes it goes wrong from the technical perspective, when a Zoom call crashes and we don't know how to, or when I send the wrong link via email and we need to deal with that. Or also with some activities that don't work the way we were expecting, right? But being upfront and being very honest and open with it, like I've seen people being very understanding and actually excited and seeing themselves, like everyone can make mistakes.
Right, exactly. It's not just that they're more understanding, but also they then feel more comfortable of taking risks and make mistakes on their own. And one element that I know that you've especially focused on since you've been helping and coordinating the course is not just creating a community, but focusing on making sure it's a caring community. And really focusing on the relationships and the ways that people engage with one another, both in the ways that facilitators support people, but also the way that people and the participants interact with each other. Maybe say a little bit more about the motivations of focusing on creating a culture of caring within the community.
Yeah. This is a big question because care is something that is so, that I care about a lot. And I think there's several reasons and several ways in which care is part of LCL. I think when we start with a kind of like a recognition of, we were saying, we are all humans, we all make mistakes, we're all here to learn. I think caring for each other becomes somehow natural, but it requires a culture and environment where this care is cultivated every day. And it can look like very small things. For example, when we try to coordinate a meeting with 40 facilitators in I don't know how many time zones, it's very complicated, right? And rather than saying, oh, sorry, you can't join, we're trying to maximize the number of facilitators, we say, okay, let's do 2 meetings, let's do 3 meetings, let's go a little beyond, just to make sure that everyone is taken care of, is listened, can participate, right? And this is just like a small example. Like we try really to, in the forum, for example, when participants share what they're doing, to really be mindful that it took a lot of effort for them, like to take the time to make something, and they're like, also it takes some risk in sharing what they're doing, like to really being on the listening, encouraging side, and really look at others with the care that keeps spreading. Because we do it in the context of facilitators, and facilitators do it with the participants, and hopefully participants kind of like can just like carry this forward, like with their students in the spaces they inhabit as educators.
I know I sometimes think about this in connection with my mentor, Seymour Papert, who's a big inspiration for me. He used to talk about wanting to support learners in creating things, but not just creating. He wanted them to think about their creating and also to think about their thinking. So he always emphasized that one of the things he was really hoping for, and he thought was really valuable, for people to be thinking about thinking. And I think with your work, you're really also trying to engage people in caring about caring. And I know some of the caring about caring supports the thinking about thinking. I think if you want to help people develop their thinking and develop their voice, that being part of a caring environment is probably going to be it's essential if they're going to feel comfortable to be able to take the risks that are needed to be able to develop their thinking and develop their voice.
Yeah, I really loved when I heard for the first time this idea of thinking about thinking, and and uh, I'm, and when I talk about caring, I see it as a complementary aspect of it. You know, there's the education of the mind and the education of the heart. I don't know how to say, like of the soul. You know, there's like a moral, ethical kind of like angle that we can use to look at the work that we are doing. So I think these two things need to go hand in hand. And it's true that a caring environment helps creating the conditions for a more effective kind of like a meaningful learning experience to happen. I would also argue that being in a caring environment has value in itself, and in addition to kind of facilitating a more meaningful and more effective learning, for sure.
It definitely has influenced the way that we talk about our work here in the Lifelong Kindergarten Group. For many years, again, we've focused on the phrase creative learning. And of course, the name of the course, Learning Creative Learning. We feel it's really important to engage people in creative learning experiences, developing as creative thinkers. But we've also come to realize that if people become creative, but then use their creativity in unethical ways or with not aligned to a value system, that's not what we want. So these days, we oftentimes talk about our work in terms of the 4 C's of helping young people develop as creative, curious, caring, and collaborative learners. And it does feel we need this whole combination to really help people develop the range of qualities and skills that are needed to be, sort of meaningful members of a community.
Yeah. And you're using the word meaningful. I don't know, like from an ethical stance, I would say good members of the community.
Good. Yeah.
And I know it's a tricky word, but what does it mean to be good? But like to me, the goal is really to have kind of, especially in a world that is like full of conflict and increasingly, individualistic, like care is an antidote to that, right? And as we think of the pedagogical framework that you developed, and in this group developed of the 4 P's of the 4 C's, it's always for me increasingly important to think what does it mean, what does it mean to be creative? What do you use that creativity for? And sometimes you talk about the 5th P, which is the purpose, right? What is the purpose of being creative? What is the purpose of learning in this way? Maybe you can say a little more about the 5th P.
Yeah, I think sometimes, although we didn't originally have it, we do realize that sometimes just those original 4 P's of projects, passion, peers, and play doesn't really connect to how do I engage, how do I do something, I was going to say meaningful or good for the community that I'm part of. How am I motivated to engage with others? So it's not just about interacting with peers, but also doing something that's meaningful to me or to others in the community. So I do think it connects somewhat with these ideas of caring, does connect with the ideas of purpose that we would have.
Yeah, I mean, there is also, this idea of seeing how very smart and creative people, are using their skills in the world. And sometimes, you can have very creative criminals, people who are really using all their resources to harm others, right? And so even when we're talking about care, which seems such a, pure kind of like good thing that we want people to care about, I think we need to engage with these terms critically and think, what does it mean really to care, right? For someone who's caring about their immediate community or their immediate family, I don't think that's enough, right? The challenge is when you're expanding this horizon, or who do you care for? Like if someone is like of a different religion, is a different race, is a different political kind of idea, like what does it mean to care in a caring community? I think of these things at a global level, not only at a small level. And of course, it gets challenging as we see how the world is unfolding right now.
I know that Well, even just staying within the bounds of the Learning Creative Learning course and community, I know you've thought about different aspects of care and in talking to the facilitators, what are the different ways that they can be engaging with participants, the different forms of care that they can be, putting into practice. So maybe you can talk a little bit about the different forms of care.
Yeah, that was an exercise and an experiment that I did for my PhD dissertation. And I was looking at hours and hours of recordings of facilitators engaging with participants in the LCL community, especially during the Zoom calls where we were making together with Scratch. And I was really looking at what they were doing and their interaction through a lens of care. So in which ways are they showing care? And because maybe another thing that I would add before that is like care can mean also different things. You know, if I'm interested in something, I may say that I care for something, right? But I don't do anything about it. I wanted to see this like enacted care in the facilitation practice. And so I was looking what the facilitators are doing. And I chose 3 facilitators as case studies, and of course what they were doing was reflected in all the other, in other forms with other facilitators. And I kind of like identified 3 main ways that facilitators cared. One that I called epistemic care, which is a little tricky word, but it means like caring for what the other people knows and what the other person kind of like how they engage with learning, right? And I can give examples of it. When a facilitator is excited that a participant learn about variables, that's something that shows that they really care for them to learn some content, like, or some ideas. And then there is like another type of care that I called affirming care, which is caring for who the person is, who the learner is, and their ideas, and valuing their ideas, and valuing who they are. And so when a participant would make a project featuring their cat, or making something for someone else, like that was something that were putting themselves into it, and a facilitator usually is there to encourage, to validate, to be there and affirm and see
their own development and their own.
Yes. And then another aspect of care that I highlighted was what I called convivial care. It's like a social aspect of care, and caring for creating an environment where people are well together. And the different ways facilitators are welcoming people in, or they're facilitating the conversations and exchange between participants. And of course, these 3 aspects of care are not exhaustive. Mm-hmm. There's many other ways to look at care. These 3 felt particularly relevant to me. And also was interesting to see how this 3 aspects are sometimes in contrast with each other. If you want to, create an environment where people help each other, but maybe their sharing information are not necessarily accurate. So the epistemic care is in contrast with the social and affirming care. So I played a little bit about with these ideas.
Yeah. But it also shows some of the subtlety and complexity of having someone really develop a sort of a caring relationship with others, because there are many dimensions to it, which makes me think sometimes I worry that the word care gets thrown around a little loosely these days, particularly with the whole trend of proliferation of AI. And at least one of the challenges that I sometimes see is there are all these sort of AI agents that act as if they care, but it certainly isn't caring the way that you're talking about caring.
Mm-hmm. It's been very interesting to me to see how this like new generative AI technologies, in particular large language models, have been used in a variety of ways. But one of these ways is for companionship, or for to have something, I don't know how to say, that listens to us and gives us advice, encouragement and support. And I know there is another phrase by Sherry Turkle that we really like, which maybe we're summarizing, maybe like in short, is like artificial intelligence can be intelligence, but artificial empathy is not empathy, right? Yeah. And I totally resonate with this idea. So we can make smart things, but we cannot make compassionate things, or at least in the way from this like human-centered perspective, it's not authentic. So it's not there.
Yeah, but I think it can really be confusing, especially young people as they're growing up, if things are presented as if they are compassionate, but really don't have those qualities. How does that then lead them to develop their own sense of care between humans? So,
and I think this is also something that we should take very seriously. You know, if people are resorting to AI to fulfill those type of needs, we should take those needs very seriously, right? And for me, it's okay if people spend time developing better technologies, but if you believe that the human aspect cannot be replaced with technologies, what you do is to invest more in developing the people and helping people become more caring, more able to listen, more able to support others. And it's not an easy task. I think it's easier to develop technologies, and especially at scale, than scaling care. Although it's harder, actually the fact that it's harder makes me want to spend more energy and time in doing that.
And it's going to be more valuable to both people and society. I think another challenge that comes up in the education space is that even people take seriously that the AI agent should not be trying to represent itself as caring. Sometimes people then say, okay, well, it can just do the delivery of instruction and delivery of information. And then the people, the human teachers, can support the relationships. But I think dividing up the parts of the learning process into content and relationship, I think is also problematic.
I've heard this argument a lot, especially from people who are developing technologies in response to the fear of teachers of being replaced, right? And so these companies are saying, no worries, we're not going to replace you. No one is going to replace teachers, but we're going to take out some of the work from you, which is the content delivery, so you can focus on the relationship. And I don't buy this argument because as an educator myself, I know that I create the relationship while I'm helping them do something, right? Create something. When they have a question about how do I do this on Scratch, they're going to ask me, and that's an opportunity to develop relationships.
Actually, it just occurred to me, I mean, Seymour Papert had this saying, he said, you can't think about thinking without thinking about something. And similarly, you can't care about caring without caring about something. Yes. So if you remove that something and say, oh, you can just have the relationship, you can't care about caring without caring about something.
Absolutely. It needs some grounding. It needs some concreteness. And
when you work through a project together or work through a problem together, relationship grows out of working together on things, not just being separate from that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, another thing that I know that you've talked about is the relevance of, creating a culture of caring in today's society. And it goes beyond just helping the individual being able to develop their voice and thinking and feel comfortable in the community. What does it mean more broadly for the whole society? Actually, I'm going to read, there's a quote that I had that you wrote that I'm just going to read it because to me it really was striking, and maybe you can then elaborate and say more about it. Mm-hmm. You said, in a time when educational discourse is increasingly shaped by ideals of efficiency and optimization, and the world faces rising authoritarianism and dehumanization, choosing to care is not only pedagogically meaningful, but politically urgent.
Yeah, there is a lot to unpack there, right? And in that sentence, I try to concentrate many of my worries, the fact that education is becoming kind of like productified, and so how can you increase the efficiency? How do you, like when people develop technologies or activities or programs, their main kind of measurement is like, how efficient is this initiative, right? And I think you said, like, is the more we we focus on what we can easily measure, we might lose something much more important that is not measurable, right? And also the connection between these ideals of efficiency that works pretty well in the startup world, in this like, kind of capitalistic society that you want to maximize some type of outcome. Well, in the realm of education, it's a little different, right? It's not that you wanna increase or maximize the number of words that someone learns, right? It is like you want to help a person to grow and become a person more holistically, right? And that conversation, that kind of aspect gets like very much dismissed. And I think it is connected to the broader political aspect of like raising authoritarianism, where you want to create this machine as a state that works and maximizes resources, but the expenses of other people, of other countries, right? And everyone is like
and undermining individuals within that authoritarian regime. They're undermining or limiting their opportunities for their own choices and their own voices and their various relationships. So the caring is so important for being able to...
Absolutely. And when I talk about dehumanization, I talk about this aspect of making it very hard for people to express themselves, right? And then you see this like regimes who are like killing their own people and oppressing people, or kind of like oppressing other people because they want to get their land, or they want to get, like something out of them. And so the human cost is dismissed, or is part of an equation where there's something else to gain. That breaks my heart.
And there's the extreme case of killing people, but there's also in so many even subtle ways of people being restricted in their opportunities that happens, and it's important for people to be aware of that and understand it and develop the ways of expressing and relating that can have them take a stance against that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I think, connected to care, there is the courage to care. And in that quote, I use the word like choosing to care, right? I think that is something that, again, might not seem obvious. When I grew up in a world, in a society in which if I was caring for someone who was a victim of injustice, I was rewarded by society, right? And all of a sudden, like in the last few years, I'm in an environment that if I stand for human rights, if I stand for international law, and I'm thinking about Palestine, which is one of the cases that are very close to me. I have so many friends there, and I support students there. And then when I show that I care, all of a sudden the environment is kind of like not supporting for sure, and sometimes like getting in the way. I would never imagine growing up to live in a world in which to care for someone who's a victim of injustice would cause me problems. And my problems are very little compared to problems that people are facing, and even raising your voice and expressing yourself freely is becoming extremely hard. It has a cost.
And the hope is that participants in a course and community like Learning Creative Learning, where they're learning about these ideas about a caring community within a certain protected environment, hopefully can then take those and apply to other things in their lives and some of the bigger issues that are going on in the world, and much more serious issues where caring is going to be so important in a world that's trying to undermine the...
Yes, I see a parallel with play. When we say that we want an environment where people are feel free to experiment, to try things, to make mistakes. And we create an environment for example, in a Scratch workshop. If you make a mistake, well, it doesn't matter. You can change something. Or in LCL, there's no right or wrong answers really, and then you can engage in an environment that's very supportive of playfulness. What we hope is that you get into this mindset and you get to take bigger and bigger risks, you can get like into this habit of doing something because you want to do it, you want to try it. Yes.
Yeah. Well, maybe to wrap up, it would be great there are a lot of different ideas that you've talked about that grow out of the creative learning course and community. If you want to talk to other educators, maybe parents out there, about ways of supporting the type of things that creative learning is trying to do in their lives, what type of advice would you give people for navigating these ideas in the world today?
Yeah, it's hard to give advice, right? I'm in this process of learning myself how to deal with this new environment, and there's one idea, one quote that sometimes I go back to when I feel helpless. I think it's very easy today to feel helpless, and maybe to put it even more in the context of education, you might see, what do you tell a person, like a young person in school, about bullying when adults at any level, till the international level, bullying is rewarded, right? Sometimes I feel really helpless. What can I do? And I think my way of coping with this is trying to be helpful. So from my response to helplessness, being helpless, is I want to do something. I want to feel helpful, and personally, again, the work that I'm doing, with Spokes for Gaza, which takes some of the ideas from learning creative learning and brings them into an environment, online, working and being connected holistically, forming communities with young people in Gaza, gave me this force, this strength to continue and to work. So my advice for people is to find ways, that can help them do something and to feel helpful. There are tons of ways in which people can be helpful. Find those ways. And even in terms of community, LCL is an example of a community that I go back to when I need to be surrounded by people who are like-minded and care for the same things that they care about, So within this kind of very challenging situation and challenging world, find those little spots that are kind of give us some relief, and cultivate them and learn within them and make them expand and make them endure.
Okay, I think that's great advice. And if people want to join the creative learning community, they should go to lcl.media.mit.edu.
Yes, please join us. We're going to start in April 13. So very soon, if you're watching this podcast, the moment it's released, we're opening the door on April 13, and then the actual course is going to start on April 20.
Great. Okay. Thanks so much for joining, Carmelo.
Thank you, Mitch.
The Lifelong Kindergarten podcast is produced by Mitch Resnick and Eric Schelling in the Lifelong Kindergarten Research Group at the MIT Media Lab. You can find other episodes, additional resources, and online conversation in our Substack at bit.ly/LLK podcast.